Step into a world of complex mysteries and thrilling adventures where every clue holds the key to unraveling a deeper truth. In Detectives and Young Adventurers, we follow a group of determined, sharp-witted detectives and daring young adventurers as they navigate dangerous situations, uncover secrets, and uncover the true power of trust and perseverance, from high-stakes heists to the most puzzling of criminal schemes. This audiobook brings together a perfect blend of suspense, clever twists, and unforgettable characters. With the sharpness of Hercule Poirot and the courage of fearless adventurers, each chapter will have you questioning what's truly at stake and who can be trusted. Whether you're an avid fan of mysteries or new to the genre, this captivating story will keep you on the edge of your seat, entangled in webs of deception and brilliance. Prepare yourself for a journey where every step could lead to danger, and every decision could mean the difference between success and failure. Don't miss out on this thrilling tale of detective mastery and young adventurers. Your next great mystery awaits. Chapter 45. They mutter inaudibly that it is nothing. But do they really think that themselves? Not for a moment. They would admire the exploit in someone else. So, being reasonable men, they admire it in themselves, but their training prevents them from saying so. Me, I am not like that. The talents that I possess, I would salute them in another. As it happens, in my own particular line, there is no one to touch me. C'est dommage as it is, I admit freely and without hypocrisy that I am a great man. I have the order, the method, and the psychology in an unusual degree. I am, in fact, Hercule Poirot. Why should I turn red and stammer and mutter into my chin that really I am very stupid? It would not be true. There is certainly only one Hercule Poirot, I agreed, not without a spice of malice of which, fortunately, Poirot remained quite oblivious. Lady Chatterton was one of Poirot's most ardent admirers, and, starting from the mysterious conduct of a Pekingese, he had unraveled a chain which led to a noted burglar and housebreaker. Lady Chatterton had been loud in his praises ever since. To see Poirot at a party was a great sight. His faultless evening clothes, the exquisite set of his white tie, the exact symmetry of his hair parting, the sheen of pomade on his hair, and the tortured splendor of his famous mustaches all combined to paint the perfect picture of an inveterate dandy. It was hard, at these moments, to take the little man seriously. It was about 11:30 when Lady Chatterton, bearing down upon us, whisked Poirot neatly out of an admiring group and carried him off, I need hardly say, with myself in tow. "I want you to go into my little room upstairs," said Lady Chatterton, rather breathlessly, as soon as she was out of earshot of her other guests. "You know where it is. Poirot. You'll find someone there who needs your help very badly, and you will help her. I know. She's one of my dearest friends. So don't say no." Energetically leading the way as she talked, Lady Chatterton flung open a door, exclaiming as she did so, "I've got him. Margarita, darling, and he'll do anything you want. You will help Mrs. Clayton, won't you? Poirot." And taking the answer for granted, she withdrew with the same energy that characterized all her movements. Mrs. Clayton had been sitting in a chair by the window. She rose now and came toward us, dressed in deep mourning. The dull black showed up her fair coloring. She was a singularly lovely woman, and there was about her a simple childlike candor which made her charm quite irresistible. "Alice Chatterton is so kind," she said. "She arranged this. She said you would help me. Poirot. Of course I don't know whether you will or not, but I hope you will." She had held out her hand, and Poirot had taken it. He held it now for a moment or two, while he stood scrutinizing her closely. There was nothing ill-bred in his manner of doing it. It was more the kind but searching look that a famous consultant gives a new patient as the latter is ushered into his presence. "Are you sure, madame," he said at last, "that I can help you?" "Alice says so." "Yes, but I'm asking you, madam." A little flush rose to her cheeks. "I don't know what you mean." "What is it, madam, that you want me to do? You know who I am?" she asked. "Assuredly." "Then you can guess what it is I am asking you to do." Poirot, Captain Hastings." I was gratified that she realized my identity. "Major Rich did not kill my husband." "Why not?" "I beg your pardon." Poirot smiled at her slight discomfiture. "I said, why not?" he repeated. "I'm not sure that I understand." "Yet it is very simple. The police, the lawyers, they will all ask the same question. Why did Major Rich kill Clayton? I ask the opposite. I ask you, madam, why did Major Rich not kill Mr. Clayton? You mean, why I'm so sure. Well, but I know Major Rich so well. You know Major Rich so well," repeated Poirot tonelessly. The color flamed into her cheeks. "Yes, that's what they'll say, what they'll think." "Oh, I know. C'est vrai. That is what they will ask you about. How well you knew Major Rich. Perhaps you will speak the truth. Perhaps you will lie. It is very necessary for a woman to lie. It is a good weapon. But there are 3 people, madame, to whom a woman should speak the truth. To her father confessor, to her hairdresser, and to her private detective. If she trusts him, do you trust me?" "Madame?" Margarita Clayton drew a deep breath. "Yes," she said. "I do. I must," she added rather childishly. "Then, how well do you know Major Rich?" She looked at him for a moment in silence. Then she raised her chin defiantly. "I will answer your question. I loved Jack from the first moment I saw him. 2 years ago. Lately, I believe, he has come to love me. But he has never said so." "Épatant," said Poirot. "You have saved me a good quarter of an hour by coming to the point without beating the bush. You have the good sense. Now, your husband, did he suspect your feelings?" "I don't know," said Margarita slowly. "I thought, lately, that he might. His manner has been different. But that may have been merely my fancy. Nobody else knew. I do not think so. And, pardon me, madame, you did not love your husband." There were, I think, very few women who would have answered that question as simply as this woman did. They would have tried to explain their feelings. Margarita Clayton said quite simply, "No." "Bien. Now we know where we are. According to you, madame, Major Rich did not kill your husband, but you realize that all the evidence points to his having done so. Are you aware, privately, of any flaw in that evidence?" "No." I know nothing. When did your husband first inform you of his visit to Scotland? Just after lunch. He said it was a bore, but he'd have to go. Something to do with land values. He said it was. And after that, he went out to his club. I think I didn't see him again. Now, as to Major Rich, what was his manner that evening? Just as usual? Yes, I think so. You are not sure. Margarita wrinkled her brows. He was a little constrained, with me, not with the others. But I thought I knew why that was. You understand, I am sure the constraint, or absent-mindedness, perhaps describes it better, had nothing to do with Edward. He was surprised to hear that Edward had gone to Scotland, but not unduly so. And nothing else unusual occurs to you in connection with that evening, Margarita thought. No, nothing whatever. You notice the chest? She shook her head with a little shiver. I don't even remember it, or what it was like. We played poker most of the evening. Who won? Major Rich. I had very bad luck, and so did Major Curtis. The Spences won a little, but Major Rich was the chief winner. The party broke up when, about 12:30, I think, we all left together. Ah, Poirot remained silent, lost in thought. I wish I could be more helpful to you, said Mrs. Clayton. I seem to be able to tell you so little. About the present, yes. What about the past? Madam, the past, yes. Have there not been incidents? She flushed. You mean that dreadful little man who shot himself? It wasn't my fault. Poirot. Indeed it wasn't. It was not precisely of that incident that I was thinking. That ridiculous duel. But Italians do fight duels. I was so thankful the man wasn't killed. It must have been a relief to you, agreed Poirot gravely. She was looking at him doubtfully. He rose and took her hand in his. I shall not fight a duel for you, madame, he said, but I will do what you have asked me. I will discover the truth. And let us hope that your instincts are correct, that the truth will help and not harm you. Our first interview was with Major Curtis. He was a man of about 40, of soldierly build, with very dark hair and a bronzed face. He had known the Claytons for some years, and Major Rich also. He confirmed the press reports. Clayton and he had had a drink together at the club just before 7:30, and Clayton had then announced his intention of looking in on Major Rich on his way to Euston. What was Mr. Clayton's manner? Was he depressed or cheerful? The Major considered. He was a slow-spoken man. Seemed in fairly good spirits, he said at last. He said nothing about being on bad terms with Major Rich. Good Lord, no. They were pals. He didn't object to his wife's friendship with Major Rich. The Major became very red in the face. You've been reading those damn newspapers, with their hints and lies. Of course he didn't object. Why? He said to me, Margarita's going. Of course. I see. Now, during the evening, the manner of Major Rich was that much as usual. I didn't notice any difference. And Madame She, too, was as usual. Well, he reflected, now I come to think of it, she was a bit quiet, thoughtful and far away. Who arrived first? The Spences. They were there when I got there. As a matter of fact, I'd called round for Mrs. Clayton, but found she'd already started, so I got there a bit late. And how did you amuse yourselves? You danced. You played the cards? A bit of both? Danced first of all. There were 5 of you. Yes, but that's all right, because I don't dance. I put on the records, and the others danced. Who danced most with whom? Well, as a matter of fact, the Spences like dancing together. They've got a sort of craze on it, fancy steps and all that. So that Mrs. Clayton danced mostly with Major Rich. That's about it. And then you played poker. Yes. And when did you leave? Oh, quite early, a little after midnight. Did you all leave together? Yes. As a matter of fact, we shared a taxi, dropped Mrs. Clayton first, then me, and the Spences took it on to Kensington. Our next visit was to Mr. and Mrs. Spence. Only Mrs. Spence was at home, but her account of the evening tallied with that of Major Curtis, except that she displayed a slight acidity concerning Major Rich's luck at cards. Earlier in the morning, Poirot had had a telephone conversation with Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard. As a result, we arrived at Major Rich's rooms and found his manservant, Burgoyne, expecting us. The valet's evidence was very precise and clear. Mr. Clayton had arrived at 20 minutes to 8. Unluckily, Major Rich had just that very minute gone out. Mr. Clayton had said that he couldn't wait, as he had to catch a train, but he would just scrawl a note. He accordingly went into the sitting room to do so. Burgoyne had not actually heard his master come in, as he was running the bath, and Major Rich, of course, let himself in with his own key. In his opinion, it was about 10 minutes later that Major Rich called him and sent him out for cigarettes. No, he had not gone into the sitting room. Major Rich had stood in the doorway. He had returned with the cigarettes 5 minutes later, and on this occasion he had gone into the sitting room, which was then empty, save for his master, who was standing by the window smoking. His master had inquired if his bath were ready, and on being told it was, had proceeded to take it. He, Burgoyne, had not mentioned Mr. Clayton, as he assumed that his master had found Mr. Clayton there and let him out himself. His master's manner had been precisely the same as usual. He had taken his bath, changed, and shortly after, Mr. and Mrs. Spence had arrived, to be followed by Major Curtis and Mrs. Clayton. It had not occurred to him, Burgoyne explained, that Mr. Clayton might have left before his master's return. To do so, Mr. Clayton would have had to bang the front door behind him, and that the valet was sure he would have heard, still in the same impersonal manner. Burgoyne proceeded to his finding of the body. For the first time, my attention was directed to the fatal chest. It was a good-sized piece of furniture standing against the wall next to the phonograph cabinet. It was made of some dark wood and plentifully studded with brass nails. The lid opened simply enough. I looked in and shivered. Though well scrubbed, ominous stains remained. Suddenly, Poirot uttered an exclamation. Those holes there, they are curious. One would say that they had been newly made. The holes in question were at the back of the chest against the wall. There were 3 or 4 of them. They were about 1/4 of an inch in diameter and certainly had the effect of having been freshly made. Poirot bent down to examine them, looking inquiringly at the valet. It's certainly curious, sir. I don't remember ever seeing those holes in the past, though maybe I wouldn't notice them. It makes no matter, said Poirot. Closing the lid of the chest, he stepped in. back into the room until he was standing with his back against the window. Then he suddenly asked a question. "Tell me," he said, "when you brought the cigarettes into your master that night, was there not something out of place in the room?" Burgoyne hesitated for a minute. Then, with some slight reluctance, he replied, "It's odd you're saying that, sir. Now you come to mention it, there was that screen there that cuts off the draft from the bedroom door. It was moved a bit more to the left, like this." Poirot darted nimbly forward and pulled at the screen. It was a handsome affair of painted leather. It already slightly obscured the view of the chest, and as Poirot adjusted it, it hid the chest altogether. "That's right, sir," said the valet. "It was like that. And the next morning, it was still like that. I remember. I moved it away, and it was then I saw the stain. The carpet's gone to be cleaned, sir. That's why the boards are bare." Poirot nodded. "I see," he said. "I thank you." He placed a crisp piece of paper in the valet's palm. "Thank you, sir." "Poirot," I said, when we were out in the street, "that point about the screen, is that a point helpful to Rich?" "It is a further point against him," said Poirot ruefully. "The screen hid the chest from the room. It also hid the stain on the carpet. Sooner or later, the blood was bound to soak through the wood and stain the carpet. The screen would prevent discovery for the moment. Yes, but there is something there that I do not understand. The valet, Hastings, the valet. What about the valet? He seemed a most intelligent fellow. As you say, most intelligent. Is it credible, then, that Major Rich failed to realize that the valet would certainly discover the body in the morning immediately after the deed? He had no time for anything. Granted. He shoves the body into the chest, pulls the screen in front of it, and goes through the evening, hoping for the best. But after the guests are gone, surely, then is the time to dispose of the body. Perhaps he hoped the valet wouldn't notice the stain. That, mon ami, is absurd. A stained carpet is the first thing a good servant would be bound to notice. And Major Rich, he goes to bed and snores there comfortably, and does nothing at all about the matter. Very remarkable and interesting, that. Curtis might have seen the stains when he was changing the records the night before. I suggested. That is unlikely. The screen would throw a deep shadow just there. No. But I begin to see. Yes. Dimly I begin to see. See what? I asked eagerly. The possibilities, shall we say, of an alternative explanation. Our next visit may throw light on things. Our next visit was to the doctor who had examined the body. His evidence was a mere recapitulation of what he had already given at the inquest. Deceased had been stabbed to the heart with a long, thin knife, something like a stiletto. The knife had been left in the wound. Death had been instantaneous. The knife was the property of Major Rich and usually lay on his writing table. There were no fingerprints on it. The doctor understood. It had been either wiped or held in a handkerchief. As regards time, any time between 7 and 9 seemed indicated. He could not, for instance, have been killed after midnight, asked Poirot. No, that I can say. 10 o'clock at the outside, but 7:30 to 8 seems clearly indicated. There is a second hypothesis possible, Poirot said when we were back home. I wonder if you see it, Hastings. To me it is very plain, and I only need one point to clear up the matter for good and all. It's no good, I said. I'm not there. But make an effort. Hastings, make an effort. Very well, I said. At 7:40, Clayton is alive and well. The last person to see him alive is Rich. So we assume. Well, isn't it so? You forget, mon ami, that Major Rich denies that. He states explicitly that Clayton had gone when he came in. But the valet says that he would have heard Clayton leave because of the bang of the door. And also, if Clayton had left, when did he return? He couldn't have returned after midnight because the doctor says positively that he was dead at least 2 hours before that. That only leaves one alternative. Yes, mon ami, said Poirot. That in the 5 minutes Clayton was alone in the sitting room, someone else came in and killed him. But there we have the same objection. Only someone with a key could come in without the valet's knowing. And in the same way, the murderer on leaving would have had to bang the door, and that again the valet would have heard. Exactly, said Poirot. And therefore, nothing, I said. I can see no other solution. It is a pity, murmured Poirot, and it is really so exceedingly simple as the clear blue eyes of Madame Clayton. You really believe? I believe nothing until I have got proof. One little proof will convince me. He took up the telephone and called Jap at Scotland Yard. 20 minutes later, we were standing before a little heap of assorted objects laid out on a table. They were the contents of the dead man's pockets. There was a handkerchief, a handful of loose change, a pocketbook containing £3 10 shillings, a couple of bills, and a worn snapshot of Margarita Clayton. There was also a pocket knife, a gold pencil, and a cumbersome wooden tool. It was on this latter that Poirot swooped. He unscrewed it, and several small blades fell out. You see, Hastings, a gimlet, and all the rest of it. Ah, it would be a matter of a very few minutes to bore a few holes in the chest with this. Those holes we saw, precisely. You mean it was Clayton who bored them himself? Mais, oui. What did they suggest to you? Those holes they were not to see through, because they were at the back of the chest. What were they for? Then clearly for air. But you do not make air holes for a dead body. So clearly they were not made by the murderer. They suggest one thing, and one thing only, that a man was going to hide in that chest, and at once, on that hypothesis, things become intelligible. Mr. Clayton is jealous of his wife and Rich. He plays the old trick of pretending to go away. He watches Rich go out. Then he gains admission, is left alone to write a note, quickly bores those holes and hides inside the chest. His wife is coming there that night. Possibly Rich will put the others off. Possibly she will remain after the others have gone, or pretend to go and return. Whatever it is, Clayton will know. Anything is preferable to the ghastly torment of suspicion he is enduring. Then you mean that Rich killed him after the others had gone, but the doctor said that was impossible. Exactly. So you see, Hastings. He must have been killed during the evening. But everyone was in the room. Precisely, said Poirot gravely. You see the beauty of that. Everyone was in the room. What an alibi. What sang-froid. What nerve. What audacity. I still don't understand. Who went behind that screen to wind up the phonograph and change the records? The phonograph and the chest were side by side. Remember, the others are dancing. The phonograph is playing. And the man who does not dance lifts the lid of the chest and thrusts the knife he has just slipped into his sleeve deep into the body of the man who was hiding there. Impossible. The man would cry out, "Not if he were drugged first. Drugged. Yes, who did Clayton have a drink with at 7:30? Ah, now you see, Curtis has inflamed Clayton's mind with suspicions against his wife and Rich. Curtis suggests this plan: the visit to Scotland, the concealment in the chest, the final touch of moving the screen. Not so that Clayton can raise the lid a little and get relief. No, so that he, Curtis, can raise that lid unobserved. The plan is Curtis's, and observe the beauty of it. Hastings. If Rich had observed the screen was out of place and moved it back, well, no harm is done. He can make another plan. Clayton hides in the chest. The mild narcotic that Curtis had administered takes effect. He sinks into unconsciousness. Curtis lifts up the lid and strikes. And the phonograph goes on playing Walking My Baby Back Home. I found my voice. Why? But why? Poirot shrugged his shoulders. Why did a man shoot himself? Why did two Italians fight a duel? Curtis is of a dark, passionate temperament. He wanted Margarita Clayton, with her husband and Rich out of the way. She would, or so he thought, turn to him. He added musingly, these simple, childlike women. They are very dangerous. But mon Dieu, what an artistic masterpiece. It goes to my heart to hang a man like that. I may be a genius myself, but I am capable of recognizing genius in other people. A perfect murder, mon ami. I, Hercule Poirot. Say it to you. A perfect murder. Epatante. Chapter 46. That she accord me a minute. Sooner than he had thought. Likely. The door opened, and Mrs. Litcham Roach entered. She floated to a chair. Mr. Barling has explained everything to me, she said. We mustn't have any scandal, of course, though I do feel really it's fate. Don't you? I mean with the mirror and everything. Comment? The mirror. The moment I saw it, it seemed a symbol of Hubert, a curse. You know, I think old families have a curse very often. Hubert was always very strange. Lately he has been stranger than ever. You will forgive me for asking, madame, but you are not in any way short of money. Money, I never think of money. Do you know what they say, madam? Those who never think of money need a great deal of it. He ventured a tiny laugh. She did not respond. Her eyes were far away. I thank you, madame, he said, and the interview came to an end. Poirot rang, and Digby answered. I shall require you to answer a few questions, said Poirot. I am a private detective sent for by your master before he died. A detective, the butler gasped. Why? You will please answer my questions. As to the shot now. He listened to the butler's account. So there were 4 of you in the hall. Yes, sir. Mr. Dalehouse and Miss Ashby and Mr. Keene came from the drawing room. Where were the others? The others, sir. Yes, Mrs. Litcham Roach, Miss Cleves, and Mr. Barling. Mrs. Litcham Roach and Mr. Barling came down later, sir. And Miss Cleves? I think Miss Cleves was in the drawing room, sir. Poirot asked a few more questions, then dismissed the butler with the command to request Miss Cleves to come to him. She came immediately, and he studied her attentively in view of Barling's revelations. She was certainly beautiful in her white satin frock with the rosebud on the shoulder. He explained the circumstances which had brought him to Litcham Close. Eyeing her very closely, but she showed only what seemed to be genuine astonishment. With no signs of uneasiness, She spoke of Marshall indifferently, with tepid approval. Only at mention of Barling did she approach animation. "That man's a crook," she said sharply. "I told the old man so, but he wouldn't listen. Went on putting money into his rotten concerns. Are you sorry, mademoiselle, that your father is dead?" She stared at him. "Of course. I'm modern. You know. Poirot. I don't indulge in sob stuff. But I was fond of the old man. Though, of course, it's best for him. Best for him. Yes. One of these days, he would have had to be locked up. It was growing on him. This belief that the last Lichem Roach of Lichem Close was omnipotent. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. I see, yes. Decided signs of mental trouble. By the way, you permit that I examine your little bag. It is charming. All these silk rosebuds. What was I saying? Oh, yes. Did you hear the shot? Oh, yes. But I thought it was a car. Or a poacher. Or something. You were in the drawing room. No, I was out in the garden. I see. Thank you, mademoiselle. Next, I would like to see Keene. Is it not? Geoffrey, I'll send him along. Keene came in, alert and interested. Mr. Barling has been telling me of the reason for your being down here. I don't know that there's anything I can tell you. But if I can... Poirot interrupted him. I only want to know one thing. Monsieur Keene, what was it that you stooped and picked up just before we got to the study door this evening? Keene half sprang up from his chair, then subsided again. I don't know what you mean, he said lightly. Oh, I think you do. Monsieur, you were behind me. I know. But a friend of mine, he says I have eyes in the back of my head. You picked up something, and you put it in the right-hand pocket of your dinner jacket. There was a pause. Indecision was written plainly on Keene's handsome face. At last, he made up his mind. Take your choice. Poirot, he said, and leaning forward, he turned his pocket inside out. There was a cigarette holder, a handkerchief, a tiny silk rosebud, and a little gold matchbox. A moment's silence, and then Keene said, as a matter of fact, it was this. He picked up the matchbox. I must have dropped it earlier in the evening. I think not, said Poirot. What do you mean? What I say. I, monsieur, am a man of tidiness, of method, of order. A matchbox on the ground. I should see it and pick it up. A matchbox of this size. Assuredly, I should see it. No, monsieur. I think it was something very much smaller, such as this. Perhaps. He picked up the little silk rosebud from Miss Cleeve's bag, I think. There was a moment's pause. Then Keene admitted it with a laugh. Yes, that's so. She gave it to me last night. I see, said Poirot. And at the moment, the door opened and a tall, fair-haired man in a lounge suit strode into the room. Keene, what's all this Lichem Roche shot himself, man? I can't believe it. It's incredible. Let me introduce you, said Keene, to Hercule Poirot. The other started. He will tell you all about it. And he left the room, banging the door. Poirot. John Marshall was all eagerness. I'm most awfully pleased to meet you. It is a bit of luck your being down here. Lichem Roach never told me you were coming. I'm a most frightful admirer of yours, sir. A disarming young man, thought Poirot. Not so young, either, for there was gray hair at the temples and lines in the forehead. It was the voice and manner that gave the impression of boyishness. "The police, they are here now, sir. I came up with them on hearing the news. They don't seem particularly surprised." Of course, he was mad as a hatter. But even then, you are surprised at his committing suicide. Frankly, yes, I shouldn't have thought that. Well, that Litcham Roach could have imagined the world getting on without him. He has had money troubles of late, I understand. Marshall nodded. He speculated. Wildcat schemes of Barling's, Poirot said quietly. I will be very frank. Had you any reason to suppose that Mr. Litcham Roach suspected you of tampering with your accounts? Marshall stared at Poirot in a kind of ludicrous bewilderment. So ludicrous was it that Poirot was forced to smile. I see that you are utterly taken aback. Captain Marshall. Yes, indeed. The idea is ridiculous. Ah, another question? He did not suspect you of robbing him of his adopted daughter. Oh, so you know about me and Di. He laughed in an embarrassed fashion. It is so. Then, Marshall nodded. But the old man didn't know anything about it. Di wouldn't have him told. I suppose she was right. He'd have gone up like a basket full of rockets. I should have been chucked out of a job. And that would have been that. And instead, what was your plan? Well, upon my word, sir, I hardly know. I left things to Di. She said she'd fix it. As a matter of fact, I was looking out for a job. If I could have got one, I would have chucked this up, and Mademoiselle would have married you. But, Litcham Roche might have stopped her allowance. Mademoiselle Diana is, I should say, fond of money. Marshall looked rather uncomfortable. I'd have tried to make it up to her, sir. Geoffrey Keene came into the room. The police are just going and would like to see you. M. Poirot. Merci. I will come. In the study were a stalwart inspector and the police surgeon. Mr. Poirot, said the inspector. We've heard of you. Sir, I'm Inspector Reeves. You are most amiable, said Poirot, shaking hands. You do not need my cooperation. No. He gave a little laugh. Not this time, sir. All plain sailing? The case is perfectly straightforward. Then, demanded Poirot. Absolutely. Door and window locked. Key of door in dead man's pocket. Manner very strange the past few days, no doubt about it. Everything quite natural. The doctor grunted. Must have been sitting at a damned queer angle for the bullet to have hit that mirror. But suicide's a queer business. You found the bullet. Yes, here. The doctor held it out. Near the wall below the mirror. Pistol was Mr. Roach's own. Kept it in the drawer of the desk always. Something behind it all, I dare say. But what that is, we shall never know. Poirot nodded. The body had been carried to a bedroom. The police now took their leave. Poirot stood at the front door, looking after them. A sound made him turn. Harry Dalehouse was close behind him. Have you, by any chance, a strong flashlight? My friend, asked Poirot. Yes, I'll get it for you. When he returned with it, Joan Ashby was with him. You may accompany me if you like, said Poirot graciously. He stepped out of the front door and turned to the right, stopping before the study window. About 6 feet of grass separated it from the path. Poirot bent down, playing the flashlight on the grass. He straightened himself and shook his head. No, he said, not there. Then he paused. and slowly his figure stiffened. On either side of the grass was a deep flower border. Poirot's attention was focused on the right-hand border, full of Michaelmas daisies and dahlias. His torch was directed on the front of the bed. Distinct on the soft mold were footprints. 4 of them, murmured Poirot. 2 going toward the window, 2 coming from it. A gardener, suggested Joan. But no, mademoiselle, but no. Employ your eyes. These shoes are small, dainty, high-heeled. The shoes of a woman. Mademoiselle Diana mentioned having been out in the garden. Do you know if she went downstairs before you did? Mademoiselle? Joan shook her head. I can't remember. I was in such a hurry because the gong went, and I thought I'd heard the first one. I do seem to remember that her room door was open as I went past, but I'm not sure. Mrs. Litcham Roach's was shut. I know. I see, said Poirot. Something in his voice made Harry look up sharply, but Poirot was merely frowning gently to himself. In the doorway, they met Diana Cleves. The police have gone, she said. It's all over. She gave a deep sigh. May I request one little word with you, mademoiselle? She led the way into the morning room, and Poirot followed, shutting the door. Well, she looked a little surprised. One little question, mademoiselle. Were you tonight at any time in the flower border outside the study window? Yes. She nodded. About 7 o'clock, and again just before dinner. I do not understand, he said. I can't see that there is anything to understand. As you call it, she said coldly. I was picking Michaelmas daisies for the table. I always do the flowers. That was about 7 o'clock. And afterward, later, oh, that. As a matter of fact, I dropped a spot of hair oil on my dress, just on the shoulder here. It was just as I was ready to come down. I didn't want to change the dress. I remembered I'd seen a late rose in bud in the border. I ran out and picked it and pinned it in. See? She came close to him and lifted the head of the rose. Poirot saw the minute grease spot. She remained close to him, her shoulder almost brushing his. And what time was this? Oh, about 10 minutes past 8, I suppose. You did not try the window. I believe I did. Yes, I thought it would be quicker to go in that way, but it was fastened. I see. Poirot drew a deep breath. And the shot, he said. Where were you when you heard that still in the flower border? Oh, no. It was 2 or 3 minutes later, just before I came in by the side door. Do you know what this is, mademoiselle? On the palm of his hand, he held out the tiny silk rosebud. She examined it coolly. It looks like a rosebud off my little evening bag. Where did you find it? It was in Mr. Keen's pocket, said Poirot dryly. Did you give it to him, mademoiselle? Did he tell you I gave it to him? Poirot smiled. When did you give it to him, mademoiselle? Last night. Did he warn you to say that, mademoiselle? What do you mean? She asked angrily. But Poirot did not answer. He strode out of the room and into the drawing room. Barling, Keene, and Marshall were there. He went straight up to them. Messieurs, he said brusquely, will you follow me to the study? He passed out into the hall and addressed Joan and Harry. You, too. I pray of you. And will somebody request Madame to come? I thank you. Ah, And here is the excellent Digby. Digby, a little question. A very important little question. Did Miss Cleves arrange some Michaelmas daisies before dinner? The butler looked bewildered. Yes, sir, she did. You are sure? Quite sure. Sir? Très bien. Now, come, all of you. Inside the study, he faced them. I have asked you to come here for a reason. The case is over. The police have come and gone. They say Mr. Litcham Roche has shot himself. All is finished. He paused. But I, Hercule Poirot, say that it is not finished. As startled eyes turned to him, the door opened, and Mrs. Litcham Roche floated into the room. I was saying, Madame, that this case is not finished. It is a matter of the psychology. Mr. Litcham Roche, he had the manie de grandeur. He was a king. Such a man does not kill himself. No. No. He may go mad, but he does not kill himself. Mr. Litcham Roche did not kill himself. He paused. He was killed. Killed. Marshall gave a short laugh. Alone in a room with the door and window locked. All the same, said Poirot stubbornly. He was killed, says, and got up and locked the door or shut the window afterward. I suppose, said Diana cuttingly. I will show you something, said Poirot. Going to the window. He turned the handle of the French windows and then pulled gently. See, they are open. Now, I close them, but without turning the handle. Now the window is closed, but not fastened. Now. He gave a short, jarring blow, and the handle turned, shooting the bolt down into its socket. You see, said Poirot softly, it is very loose. This mechanism. It could be done from outside quite easily. He turned, his manner grim. When that shot was fired at 12 minutes past 8, there were 4 people in the hall. 4 people have an alibi. Where were the other 3? You, madam. In your room. You, Monsieur Barling. Were you, too, in your room? I was. And you, Mademoiselle, were in the garden. So you have admitted. I don't see, began Diana. Wait. He turned to Mrs. Litcham Roche. Tell me, madam, have you any idea of how your husband left his money? Hubert read me his will. He said I ought to know. He left me $3,000 a year chargeable on the estate, and the dower house or the townhouse, whichever I preferred. Everything else he left to Diana, on condition that if she married her husband must take the name. Ah, but then he made a codicil thing, a few weeks ago. That was, yes, madame. He still left it all to Diana, but on condition that she married Mr. Barling. If she married anyone else, it was all to go to his nephew, Harry Dalehouse. But the codicil was only made a few weeks ago, purred Poirot. Mademoiselle may not have known of that. He stepped forward accusingly. Mademoiselle Diana, you want to marry Captain Marshall, do you not? Or is it Mr. Keene? She walked across the room and put her arm through Marshall's sound one. Go on, she said. I will put the case against you, mademoiselle. You loved Captain Marshall. You also loved money. Your adopted father. He would never have consented to your marrying Captain Marshall. But if he dies, you are fairly sure that you get everything. So, you go out. You step over the flower border to the window which is open. You have with you the pistol which you have taken from the writing table drawer. You go up to your victim, talking amiably. You fire. You drop the pistol by his hand, having wiped it and then pressed his fingers on it. You go out again, shaking the window till the bolt drops. You come into the house. Is that how it happened, I am asking you, mademoiselle? No. Diana screamed. No, no. He looked at her. Then he smiled. No, he said. It was not like that. It might have been so. It is plausible. It is possible. But it cannot have been like that for two reasons. The first reason is that you picked Michaelmas daisies at 7 o'clock. The second arises from something that Mademoiselle here told me. He turned toward Joan, who stared at him in bewilderment. He nodded encouragement. But yes, Mademoiselle, you told me that you hurried downstairs because you thought it was the second gong sounding, having already heard the first. He shot a rapid glance round the room. You do not see what that means, he cried. You do not see. Look, look. He sprang forward to the chair where the victim had sat. Did you notice how the body was not sitting square to the desk? No, sitting sideways to the desk, facing the window. Is that a natural way to commit suicide? Jamais, jamais. You write your apologia sorry on a piece of paper. You open the drawer. You take out the pistol. You hold it to your head and you fire. That is the way of suicide. But now, consider murder. The victim sits at his desk. The murderer stands beside him, talking, and talking still, fires. Where does the bullet go then? He paused. Straight through the head, through the door if it is open, and so hits the gong. Ah, you begin to see. That was the first gong, heard only by Mademoiselle, since her room is above. What does our murderer do next? Shuts the door, locks it, puts the key in the dead man's pocket, then turns the body sideways in the chair, presses the dead man's fingers on the pistol, and then drops it by his side, cracks the mirror on the wall as a final spectacular touch. In short, arranges his suicide. Then out through the window. The bolt is shaken home. The murderer steps not on the grass, where footprints must show, but on the flower bed, where they can be smoothed out behind him, leaving no trace. Then back into the house, and at 12 minutes past 8, when he is alone in the drawing room, he fires a service revolver out of the drawing room window and dashes out into the hall. Is that how you did it, Mr. Geoffrey Keene? Fascinated? The secretary stared at the accusing figure drawing nearer to him. Then, with a gurgling cry, he fell to the ground. I think I am answered, said Poirot. Captain Marshall, will you ring up the police? He bent over the prostrate form. I fancy he will be still unconscious when they come. Geoffrey Keene, murmured Diana. But what motive had he? I fancy that as secretary he had certain opportunities, accounts, checks. Something awakened Mr. Litcham Roach's suspicions. He sent for me. Why for you? Why not for the police? I think, mademoiselle, you can answer that question. Monsieur suspected that there was something between you and that young man to divert his mind from Captain Marshall. You had flirted shamelessly with Mr. Keene. But yes, you need not deny Mr. Keene gets wind of my coming and acts promptly. The essence of his scheme is that the crime must seem to take place at 8:12 when he has an alibi. His one danger is the bullet, which must be lying somewhere near the gong and which he has not had time to retrieve. When we are all on our way to the study, he picks that up. At such a tense moment, he thinks no one will notice. But me, I notice everything. I question him. He reflects a little minute, and then he plays the comedy. He insinuates that what he picked up was the silk rosebud. He plays the part of the young man in love, shielding the lady he loves. Oh, it was very clever. And if you had not picked Michaelmas daisies, I don't understand what they have to do with it. You do not. Listen. There were only 4 footprints in the bed, but when you were picking the flowers, you must have made many more than that. So, in between you're picking the flowers and you're coming to get the rosebud, someone must have smoothed over the bed. Not a gardener. No gardener works after 7. Then it must be someone guilty. It must be the murderer. The murder was committed before the shot was heard. But why did nobody hear the real shot? Asked Harry. A silencer. They will find that, and the revolver thrown into the shrubbery. What a risk. Why a risk? Everyone was upstairs dressing for dinner. It was a very good moment. The bullet was the only contretemps. And even that, as he thought, passed off well. Poirot picked it up. He threw it under the mirror when I was examining the window with Mr. Dalehouse. Oh. Diana wheeled on Marshall. Marry me, John, and take me away. Barling coughed. My dear Diana, under the terms of my friend's will. I don't care, the girl cried. We can draw pictures on pavements. There's no need to do that, said Harry. We'll go halves. I'm not going to bag things because Uncle had a bee in his bonnet. Suddenly, there was a cry. Mrs. Litcham Roach had sprung to her feet. Poirot, the mirror. He must have deliberately smashed it. Yes, madame. Oh, she stared at him. But it is unlucky to break a mirror. It has proved very unlucky for Mr. Geoffrey Keene, said Poirot cheerfully. Chapter 47. The Christmas stories collected in the book Star Over Bethlehem and Other Stories, a slightly misleading title, as it contained poems as well as stories, represent Agatha Christie's only venture into writing for children. The title story was first published in December 1946 in Woman's Journal, but it is not known when she wrote the other 5. It appears to have been specifically for the book in 1965. Agatha's husband, Max Mallowan, thought the stories were his wife's most charming and among the most original of her works, and said, "These sweet tales may fairly be styled holy detective stories." Because Star Over Bethlehem and Other Stories was not in the crime genre, Agatha chose to follow the convention set by her earlier volume of memoirs, Come, Tell Me How You Live, and publish it under her full married name of Agatha Christie Mallowan. Star Over Bethlehem was first published in Woman's Journal, December 1946. Mary looked down at the baby in the manger. She was alone in the stable, except for the animals. As she smiled down at the child, her heart was full of pride and happiness. Then suddenly, she heard the rustling of wings, and turning, she saw a great angel standing in the doorway. The angel shone with the radiance of the morning sun, and the beauty of his face was so great that Mary's eyes were dazzled, and she had to turn aside her head. Then the angel said, and his voice was like a golden trumpet, "Do not be afraid, Mary." And Mary answered in her sweet low voice, "I am not afraid, O Holy One of God, but the light of your countenance dazzles me." The angel said, "I have come to speak to you." Mary said, "Speak on, Holy One. Let me hear the commands of the Lord God." The angel said, "I have come with no commands, but since you are specially dear to God, it is permitted that, with my aid, you should look into the future day." Then Mary looked down at the child and asked eagerly, "Into his future." Her face lit up with joyful anticipation. "Yea," said the angel gently, "into his future. Give me your hand." Mary stretched out her hand and took that of the angel. It was like touching flame, yet flame that did not burn. She shrank back a little, and the angel said again, "Do not be afraid. I am immortal, and you are mortal. But my touch shall not hurt you." Then the angel stretched out his great golden wing over the sleeping child and said, "Look into the future, mother, and see your son, Hunt." And Mary looked straight ahead of her, and the stable walls melted and dissolved, and she was looking into a garden. It was night, and there were stars overhead, and a man was kneeling, praying. Something stirred in Mary's heart, and her motherhood told her that it was her son who knelt there. She said thankfully to herself, "He has become a good man, a devout man. He prays to God." And then, suddenly, she caught her breath, for the man had raised his face, and she saw the agony on it, the despair, and the sorrow. And she knew that she was looking on greater anguish than any she had ever known or seen. For the man was utterly alone. He was praying to God, praying that this cup of anguish might be taken from him, and there was no answer to his prayer. God was absent and silent. And Mary cried out, "Why does not God answer him and give him comfort?" And she heard the voice of the angel say, "It is not God's purpose that he should have comfort." Then Mary bowed her head meekly and said, "It is not for us to know the inscrutable purposes of God, but has this man, my son, has he no friends, no kindly human friends?" The angel rustled his wing, and the picture dissolved into another part of the garden, and Mary saw some men lying asleep. She said bitterly, "He needs them. My son needs them, and they do not care." The angel said, "They are only fallible human creatures." Mary murmured to herself, "But he is a good man, my son, a good and upright man." Then again the wing of the angel rustled, and Mary saw a road winding up a hill, and 3 men on it carrying crosses, and a crowd behind them, and some Roman soldiers. The angel said, "What do you see now?" Mary said, "I see 3 criminals going to execution." The left-hand man turned his head, and Mary saw a cruel, crafty face, a low, bestial type, and she drew back a little. "Yes," she said, "they are criminals." Then the man in the center stumbled and nearly fell, and as he turned his face, Mary recognized him, and she cried out sharply, "No, no, it cannot be that my son is a criminal." But the angel rustled his wing, and she saw the 3 crosses set up, and the figure hanging in agony on the center one was the man she knew to be her son. His cracked lips parted, and she heard the words that came from them. My God, why hast thou forsaken me?" And Mary cried out, "No, no, it is not true. He cannot have done anything really wrong. There has been some dreadful mistake. It can happen sometimes. There has been some confusion of identity. He has been mistaken for someone else. He is suffering for someone else's crime." But again the angel rustled his wing, and this time Mary was looking at the figure of the man she revered most on earth, the high priest of her church. He was a noble-looking man, and he stood up now, and with solemn hands he tore and rent the garment he was wearing, and cried out in a loud voice, "This man has spoken blasphemy." And Mary looked beyond him and saw the figure of the man who had spoken blasphemy, and it was her son. Then the pictures faded, and there was only the mud brick wall of the stable. and Mary was trembling and crying out brokenly, "I cannot believe it! I cannot believe it!" We are a God-fearing, straight-living family. All my family, yes, and Joseph's family too. And we shall bring him up carefully to practice religion and to revere and honor the faith of his fathers. A son of ours could never be guilty of blasphemy. I cannot believe it. All this that you have shown me cannot be true. Then the angel said, "Look at me, Mary." And Mary looked at him and saw the radiance surrounding him and the beauty of his face. And the angel said, "What I have shown you is truth, for I am the morning angel, and the light of the morning is truth. Do you believe now?" And sorely against her will, Mary knew that what she had been shown was indeed truth, and she could not disbelieve any more. The tears raced down her cheeks, and she bent over the child in the manger, her arms outspread as though to protect him. She cried out, "My child, my little helpless child, what can I do to save you, to spare you from what is to come? Not only from the sorrow and the pain, but from the evil that will blossom in your heart. Oh, indeed, it would have been better for you if you had never been born, or if you had died with your first breath, for then you would have gone back to God, pure and unsoiled." And the angel said, "That is why I have come to you." "Mary," Mary said, "what do you mean?" The angel answered, "You have seen the future. It is in your power to say if your child shall live or die." Then Mary bent her head, and amidst stifled sobs she murmured, "The Lord gave him to me. If the Lord now takes him away, then I see that it may indeed be mercy. And though it tears my flesh, I submit to God's will." But the angel said softly, "It is not quite like that. God lays no command on you. The choice is yours. You have seen the future. Choose now if the child shall live or die." Then Mary was silent for a little while. She was a woman who thought slowly. She looked once at the angel for guidance, but the angel gave her none. He was golden and beautiful and infinitely remote. She thought of the pictures that had been shown her, of the agony in the garden, of the shameful death of a man who, at the hour of death, was forsaken of God, and she heard again the dreadful word, blasphemy. And now, at this moment, the sleeping babe was pure and innocent and happy. But she did not decide at once. She went on thinking, going over and over again those pictures she had been shown. And in doing so, a curious thing happened, for she remembered little things that she had not been aware of seeing at the time. She saw, for instance, the face of the man on the right-hand cross. Not an evil face, only a weak one. And it was turned towards the center cross, and on it was an expression of love and trust and adoration. And it came to Mary with sudden wonder. It was at my son he was looking like that. And suddenly, sharply and clearly, she saw her son's face as it had been when he looked down at his sleeping friends in the garden. There was sadness there, and pity and understanding, and a great love. And she thought, "It is the face of a good man." and she saw again the scene of accusation. But this time she looked, not at the splendid high priest, but at the face of the accused man. And in his eyes was no consciousness of guilt. And Mary's face grew very troubled. Then the angel said, "Have you made your choice, Mary? Will you spare your son, suffering and evil-doing?" And Mary said slowly, "It is not for me, an ignorant and simple woman, to understand the high purposes of God. The Lord gave me my child. If the Lord takes him away, then that is his will. But since God has given him life, it is not for me to take that life away. For it may be that in my child's life there are things that I do not properly understand. Sin, it may be that I have seen only part of a picture, not the whole. My baby's life is his own, not mine, and I have no right to dispose of it." "Think again," said the angel. "Will you not lay your child in my arms, and I will bear him back to God?" "Take him in your arms if it is God's command," said Mary, "but I will not lay him there." There was a great rustling of wings and a blaze of light, and the angel vanished. Joseph came in a moment later, and Mary told him of what had occurred. Joseph approved of what Mary had done. "You did right, wife," he said, "and who knows, this may have been a lying angel." "No," said Mary, "he did not lie." She was sure of that with every instinct in her. "I do not believe a word of it all," said Joseph stoutly. "We will bring our son up very carefully and give him good religious instruction, for it is education that counts. He shall work in the shop and go with us to the synagogue on the Sabbath and keep all the feasts and the purifications. Looking in the manger, he said, 'See, our son is smiling.' And indeed the boy was smiling and holding out tiny hands to his mother, as though to say, 'Well done.' But aloft in the vaults of blue, the angel was quivering with pride and rage. 'To think that I should fail with a foolish, ignorant woman. Well, there will come another chance. One day, when he is weary and hungry and weak, then I will take him up to the top of a mountain and show him the kingdoms of this world of mine. I will offer him the lordship of them all. He shall control cities and kings and peoples. He shall have the power of causing wars to cease and hunger and oppression to vanish. One gesture of worship to me, and he shall be able to establish peace and plenty, contentment and goodwill, know himself to be a supreme power for good. He can never withstand that temptation. And Lucifer, son of the morning, laughed aloud in ignorance and arrogance and flashed through the sky like a burning streak of fire down to the nethermost depths. In the east, 3 watchers of the heavens came to their masters and said, "We have seen a great light in the sky. It must be that some great personage is born." But whilst all muttered and exclaimed of signs and portents, a very old watcher murmured, "A sign from God. God has no need of signs and wonders. It is more likely to be a sign from Satan. It is in my mind that if God were to come amongst us, he would come very quietly." But in the stable there was much fun and good company. The ass brayed, and the horses neighed, and the oxen lowed. And men and women crowded in to see the baby, and passed him from one to the other. And he laughed and crowed and smiled at them all. "See," they cried, "he loves everybody. There never was such a child." Chapter 48. The Naughty Donkey was first published in the book Star over Bethlehem and Other Stories Collins, November 1965. Once upon a time, there was a very naughty little donkey. He liked being naughty. When anything was put on his back, he kicked it off, and he ran after people trying to bite them. His master couldn't do anything with him, so he sold him to another master. And that master couldn't do anything with him and also sold him. And finally, he was sold for a few pence to a dreadful old man who bought old, worn-out donkeys and killed them by overwork and ill treatment. But the naughty donkey chased the old man and bit him, and then ran away kicking up his heels. He didn't mean to be caught again, so he joined a caravan that was going along the road. Nobody will know who I belong to in all this crowd, thought the donkey. These people were all going up to the city of Bethlehem, and when they got there, they went into a big khan full of people and animals. Sati. The little donkey slipped into a nice cool stable where there was an ox and a camel. The camel was very haughty, like all camels, because camels think that they alone know the 100th and secret name of God. He was too proud to speak to the donkey, so the donkey began to boast. He loved boasting. I am a very unusual donkey, he said. I have foresight and hindsight. What is that? Said the ox. Like my forelegs in front of me and my hind legs behind me. Why? My great 37th time great-grandmother belonged to the prophet Balaam and saw with her own eyes the angel of the Lord. But the ox went on chewing, and the camel remained proud. Then a man and a woman came in, and there was a lot of fuss. But the donkey soon found out that there was nothing to fuss about. Only a woman going to have a baby, which happens every day. And after the baby was born, some shepherds came and made a fuss of the baby. But shepherds are very simple folk. But then some men in the long rich robes came. V-I-P-S, hissed the camel. What's that? Asked the donkey. Very important people, said the camel, bringing gifts. The donkey thought the gifts might be something good to eat, so when it was dark, he began nosing around. But the first gift was yellow and hard, with no taste. The second made the donkey sneeze, and when he licked the third, the taste was nasty and bitter. What stupid gifts, said the donkey, disappointed, but as he stood there by the manger, the baby stretched out his little hand and caught hold of the donkey's ear, clutching it tight as very young babies will. And then a very odd thing happened. The donkey didn't want to be naughty anymore. For the first time in his life, he wanted to be good, and he wanted to give the baby a gift. But he hadn't anything to give. The baby seemed to like his ear, but the ear was part of him. And then another strange idea came to him. Perhaps he could give the baby himself. It was not very long after that Joseph came in with a tall stranger. The stranger was speaking urgently to Joseph, and as the donkey stared at them, he could hardly believe his eyes. The stranger seemed to dissolve, and in his place stood an angel of the Lord, a golden figure with wings. But after a moment, the angel changed back again into a mere man. Dear, I'm seeing things, said the donkey to himself. It must be all that fodder I ate. Joseph spoke to Mary. We must take the child and flee. There is no time to be lost. His eye fell on the donkey. We will take this donkey here and leave money for his owner, whoever he may be. In that way, no time will be lost. So they went out on the road from Bethlehem. But as they came to a narrow place, the angel of the Lord appeared with a flaming sword, and the donkey turned aside and began to climb the hillside. Joseph tried to turn him back onto the road, but Mary said, "Let him be. Remember the prophet Balaam." And just as they got to the shelter of some olive trees, the soldiers of King Herod came clattering down the road with drawn swords. "Just like my great-grandmother," said the donkey, very pleased with himself. "I wonder if I have foresight as well." He blinked his eyes, and he saw a dim picture. A donkey fallen into a pit, and a man helping to pull it out. "Why, it's my master, grown up to be a man," said the donkey. Then he saw another picture, the same man riding on a donkey into a city. "Of course," said the donkey, "he's going to be crowned king." But the crown seemed to be not gold, but thorns. The donkey loved thorns and thistles, but it seemed the wrong thing for a crown, and there was a smell he knew and feared, the smell of blood, and there was something on a sponge, bitter like the myrrh he had tasted in the stable. And the little donkey knew suddenly that he didn't want foresight anymore. He just wanted to live for the day, to love his little master and be loved by him, and to carry him and his mother safely to Egypt. Chapter 49. The Water Bus was first published in the book Star Over Bethlehem and Other Stories, Collins, November 1965. Mrs. Hargreaves didn't like people. She tried to. Because she was a woman of high principle and a religious woman, and she knew very well that one ought to love one's fellow creatures. But she didn't find it easy, and sometimes she found it downright impossible. All that she could do was, as you might say, to go through the motions. She sent checks for a little more than she could afford to reputable charities. She sat on committees for worthy objects and even attended public meetings for abolishing injustices, which was really more effort than anything else because, of course, it meant close proximity to human bodies, and she hated to be touched. She was able easily to obey the admonitions posted up in public transport, such as, "Don't travel in the rush hour," because to go in trains and buses, enveloped tightly in a sweltering crowd of humanity, was definitely her idea of hell on earth. If children fell down in the street, she always picked them up and bought them sweets or small toys to make them better. She sent books and flowers to sick people in hospital. Her largest subscriptions were to communities of nuns in Africa, because they and the people to whom they ministered were so far away that she would never have to come in contact with them. And also because she admired and envied the nuns who actually seemed to enjoy the work they did. And because she wished with all her heart that she were like them, she was willing to be just, kind, fair, and charitable to people, so long as she did not have to see, hear, or touch them. But she knew very well that that was not enough. Mrs. Hargreaves was a middle-aged widow with a son and daughter who were both married and lived far away, and she herself lived in a flat in comfortable circumstances in London. And she didn't like people, and there didn't seem to be anything she could do about it. She was standing on this particular morning by her daily woman, who was sitting sobbing on a chair in the kitchen and mopping her eyes. "Never told me nothing. She didn't. Not her own mum. Just goes off to this awful place. And how she heard about it, I don't know. And this wicked woman did things to her. And it went septic, or whatever they call it. And they took her off to hospital, and she's lying there now, dying. Won't say who the man was, not even now." terrible it is. My own daughter, such a pretty little girl she used to be. Lovely curls. I used to dress her ever so nice. Everybody said she was a lovely little thing. She gave a gulp and blew her nose, Pen. Mrs. Hargreaves stood there wanting to be kind, but not really knowing how, because she couldn't really feel the right kind of feeling. She made a soothing sort of noise and said that she was very, very sorry, and was there anything she could do? Mrs. Chubb paid no attention to this query. I suppose I ought to have looked after her better. Been at home more in the evenings. Found out what she was up to and who her friends were. But children don't like you poking your nose into their affairs nowadays. And I wanted to make a bit of extra money, too. Not for myself. I'd been thinking of getting Edie a slap-up gramophone. Ever so musical she is. Or something nice for the home. I'm not one for spending money on myself. She broke off for another good blow. If there is anything I can do, repeated Mrs. Hargreaves. She suggested, hopefully, a private room in the hospital. But Mrs. Chubb was not attracted by that idea. Very kind of you, madam. But they look after her very well in the ward, and it's more cheerful for her. She wouldn't like to be cooped away in a room by herself, in the ward. You see, there's always something going on. Yes. Mrs. Hargreaves saw it all clearly in her mind's eye. Lots of women sitting up in bed, or lying with closed eyes. Old women smelling of sickness and old age. The smell of poverty and disease percolating through the clean, impersonal odor of disinfectants. Nurses scurrying along, with trays of instruments and trolleys of meals, or washing apparatus. And finally the screens going up round a bed. The whole picture made her shiver, but she perceived quite clearly that to Mrs. Chubb's daughter there would be solace and distraction in the ward, because Mrs. Chubb's daughter liked people. Mrs. Hargreaves stood there by the sobbing mother and longed for the gift she hadn't got. What she wanted was to be able to put her arm round the weeping woman's shoulder and say something completely fatuous like, there, my dear, and mean it. But going through the motions would be no good at all. Actions without feeling were useless. They were without content. Oh. Quite suddenly, Mrs. Chubb gave her nose a final trumpet-like blow and sat up. There, she said brightly, I feel better. She straightened a scarf on her shoulders and looked up at Mrs. Hargreaves with a sudden and astonishing cheerfulness. Nothing like a good cry, is there? Mrs. Hargreaves had never had a good cry. Her griefs had always been inward and dark. She didn't quite know what to say. Does you good talking about things, said Mrs. Chubb. I'd best get on with the washing up. We're nearly out of tea and butter. By the way, I'll have to run round to the shops. Mrs. Hargreaves said quickly that she would do the washing up and would also do the shopping, and she urged Mrs. Chubb to go home in a taxi. Mrs. Chubb said no point in a taxi when the 11 bus got you there just as quick. So Mrs. Hargreaves gave her £2 notes and said perhaps she would like to take her daughter something in hospital. Mrs. Chubb thanked her and went. Mrs. Hargreaves went to the sink and knew that once again she had done the wrong thing. Mrs. Chubb would have much preferred to clink about in the sink, retailing fresh bits of information of a macabre character from time to time. And then she could have gone to the shops and met plenty of her fellow kind and talked to them. And they would have had relatives in hospitals, too, and they all could have exchanged stories. In that way, the time until hospital visiting hours would have passed quickly and pleasantly. Why do I always do the wrong thing? Thought Mrs. Hargreaves, washing up deftly and competently, and had no need to search for the answer, because I don't care for people. When she had stacked everything away, Mrs. Hargreaves took a shopping bag and went to shop. It was Friday, and therefore a busy day. There was a crowd in the butcher's shop. Women pressed against Mrs. Hargreaves, elbowed her aside, pushed baskets and bags between her and the counter. Mrs. Hargreaves always gave way. "Excuse me, I was here before you." A tall, thin, olive-skinned woman infiltrated herself. It was quite untrue, and they both knew it. But Mrs. Hargreaves stood politely back. Unfortunately, she acquired a defender, one of those large, brawny women who are public-spirited and insist on seeing justice is done. "You did not to let her push you around, love," she admonished, leaning heavily on Mrs. Hargreaves' shoulder and breathing gusts of strong peppermint in her face. "You was here long before she was. I come in right on her heels and I know. Go on now." She administered a fierce dig in the ribs. "Push in there and stand up for your rights." "It really doesn't matter," said Mrs. Hargreaves. "I'm not in a hurry." Her attitude pleased nobody. The original thruster, now, in negotiation for £1.50 of frying steak, turned and gave battle in a whining, slightly foreign voice. "If you think you get here before me, why not, you say? No good being so high and mighty," and saying she mimicked the words, "It doesn't matter. How do you think that makes me feel? I don't want to go out of my turn." "Oh, no," said Mrs. Hargreaves' champion with heavy irony. "Oh, no, of course not. We all know that, don't we?" She looked round and immediately obtained a chorus of assent. The thruster seemed to be well known. "We know her and her ways," said one woman darkly. "£1.50 of rump," said the butcher, thrusting forth a parcel. "Now then, come along. Who's next? Please." Mrs. Hargreaves made her purchases and escaped to the street, thinking how really awful people were. She went into the greengrocer next to buy lemons and a lettuce. The woman at the greengrocer's was, as usual, affectionate. "Well, ducks, what can we do for you today?" She rang up the cash register, said "taw," and "Here you are, dearie," as she pressed a bulging bag into the arms of an elderly gentleman who looked at her in disgust and alarm. "She always calls me that," the old gentleman confided gloomily when the woman had gone in search of lemons. "Dear, and dearie in love. I don't even know the woman's name." Mrs. Hargreaves said she thought it was just a fashion. The old gentleman looked dubious and moved off, leaving Mrs. Hargreaves feeling faintly cheered by the discovery of a fellow sufferer. Her shopping bag was quite heavy by now, so she thought she would take a bus home. There were 3 or 4 people waiting at the bus stop, and an ill-tempered conductress shouted at the passengers, "Come along now, hurry along, please. We can't wait here all day." She scooped up an elderly arthritic lady and thrust her staggering into the bus, where someone caught her and steered her to a seat, and seized Mrs. Hargreaves by the arm above the elbow with iron fingers, causing her acute pain. "Inside, only. Full up now." She tugged violently at a bell. The bus shot forward, and Mrs. Hargreaves collapsed on top of a large woman occupying, through no fault of her own, a good 3/4 of a seat for 2. "I'm so sorry," gasped Mrs. Hargreaves. "Plenty of room for a little one," said the large woman cheerfully, doing her best, without success, to make herself smaller. "Nasty temper some of these girls have, haven't they? I prefer the black men myself." Nice and polite they are. Don't hustle you. Help you in and out quite carefully. She breathed good temper and onions impartially over Mrs. Hargreaves. I don't want any remarks from you. Thank you, said the bus conductress who was now collecting fares. I'd have you know we've got our schedule to keep. That's why the bus was idling alongside the curb at the last stop. But one, said the large woman. Fourpenny, please. Mrs. Hargreaves arrived home exhausted by recrimination and unwanted affection, and also suffering from a bruised arm. The flat seemed peaceful, and she sank down gratefully. Almost immediately, however, one of the porters arrived to clean the windows and followed her round telling her about his wife's mother's gastric ulcer. Mrs. Hargreaves picked up her handbag and went out again. She wanted, badly, a desert island. Since a desert island was not immediately obtainable indeed, it would probably entail a visit to a travel agency, a passport office, vaccination, possibly a foreign visa to be obtained, and many other human contacts. She strolled down to the river. A water bus, she thought hopefully. There were such things. She believed. Hadn't she read about them? And there was a pier, a little way along the embankment. She had seen people coming off it. Of course, perhaps a water bus would be just as crowded as anything else. But here she was in luck. The steamer, or water bus, or whatever it was singularly empty. Mrs. Hargreaves bought a ticket to Greenwich. It was the slack time of day, and it was not a particularly nice day, the wind being distinctly chilly. So few people were on the water for pleasure. There were some children in the stern of the boat with a weary adult in charge, and a couple of nondescript men, and an old woman in rusty black. In the bow of the boat there was only a solitary man. So Mrs. Hargreaves went up to the bow, as far from the noisy children as possible. The boat drew away from the pier out into the Thames. It was peaceful here on the water. Mrs. Hargreaves felt soothed and serene for the first time today. She had got away from what exactly? Away from it all. That was the phrase. But she didn't know exactly what it meant. She looked gratefully around her. Blessed, blessed water. So insulating. Boats plied their way up and down stream, but they had nothing to do with her. People on land were busy with their own affairs. Let them be. She hoped they enjoyed themselves. Here she was in a boat, being carried down the river towards the sea. There were stops. People got off. People got on. The boat resumed its course. At the Tower of London, the noisy children got off. Mrs. Hargreaves hoped amiably that they would enjoy the Tower of London. Now they had passed through the docks. Her feeling of happiness and serenity grew stronger. The 8 or 9 people still on board were all huddled together in the stern, out of the wind, she supposed. For the first time, she paid a little more attention to her fellow traveler in the bows, an Oriental of some kind. She thought vaguely. He was wearing a long cape-like coat of some woolen material, an Arab, perhaps, or a Berber, not an Indian. What beautiful material the cloth of his coat was. It seemed to be woven all in one piece. So finely woven, too. She obeyed an almost irresistible impulse to touch it. She could never recapture afterwards the feeling that the touch of the coat brought her. It was quite indescribable. It was like what happens when you shake a kaleidoscope. The parts of it are the same parts, but they are arranged differently. They are arranged in a new pattern. She had wanted when she got on the water bus to escape from herself and the pattern of her mourning. She had not escaped in the way she had meant to escape. She was still herself, and she was still in the pattern, going through it all over again in her mind. But it was different this time. It was a different pattern, because she was different. She was standing again by Mrs. Chubb. Poor Mrs. Chubb. She heard the story again. Only this time it was a different story. It was not so much what Mrs. Chubb said, but what she had been feeling, her despair, and, yes, her guilt. Because, of course, she was secretly blaming herself, striving to tell herself how she had done everything for her girl, her lovely little girl, recalling the frocks she had bought her and the sweets, and how she had given in to her when she wanted things. She had gone out to work, too, but of course, in her innermost mind, Mrs. Chubb knew that it was not a gramophone for Edie she had been working for, but a washing machine. A washing machine like Mrs. Peters had down the road, and so stuck up about it, too. It was her own fierce house pride that had set her fingers to toil. True, she had given Edie things all her life, plenty of them. But had she thought about Edie enough? Thought about the boyfriends she was making? Thought about asking her friends to the house? Seeing if there wasn't some kind of party at home Edie could have? Thinking about Edie's character, her life, what would be best for her, trying to find out more about Edie, because after all, Edie was her business, the real paramount business of her life. And she mustn't be stupid about it. Goodwill wasn't enough. One had to manage not to be stupid. 2. In fancy. Mrs. Hargreaves' arm went round Mrs. Chubb's shoulder. She thought with affection, "You poor stupid dear. It's not as bad as you think. I don't believe she's dying at all." Of course, Mrs. Chubb had exaggerated, had sought deliberately for tragedy, because that was the way Mrs. Chubb saw life, in melodramatic terms. It made life less drab, easier to live. Mrs. Hargreaves understood so well. Other people came into Mrs. Hargreaves' mind. Those women enjoying their fight at the butcher's counter. Characters, all of them. Fun. Really. Especially the big red-faced woman with her passion for justice. She really liked a good row. Why on earth, Mrs. Hargreaves wondered, had she minded the woman at the greengrocer's calling her love? It was a kindly term. That bad-tempered bus conductress, why, her mind probed, came up with a solution. Her young man had stood her up the evening before, and so she hated everybody, hated her monotonous life, wanted to make other people feel her power. One could so easily feel like that if things went wrong. The kaleidoscope shook, changed. She was no longer looking at it. She was inside it, part of it. The boat hooted. She sighed, moved, opened her eyes. They had come at last to Greenwich. Mrs. Hargreaves went back by train from Greenwich. The train, at this time of day, the lunch hour, was almost empty. But Mrs. Hargreaves wouldn't have cared if it had been full, because, for a brief space of time, she was at one with her fellow beings. She liked people. Almost, she loved them. It wouldn't last. Of course, she knew that. A complete change of character was not within the bounds of reality, but she was deeply, humbly, and comprehendingly grateful for what she had been given. She knew now. what the thing that she had coveted was like. She knew the warmth of it, and the happiness knew it. Not from intelligent observation from without, but from within, from feeling it, and perhaps knowing now just what it was. She could learn the beginning of the road to it. She thought of the coat woven in the harmony of one piece. She had not been able to see the man's face, but she thought she knew who he was. Already the warmth and the vision were fading, but she would not forget. She would never forget. "Thank you," said Mrs. Hargreaves, speaking from the depths of a grateful heart. She said it aloud in the empty railway carriage. The mate of the water bus was staring at the tickets in his hand. "Where's t'other one?" he asked. "Whatcher mean?" said the captain, who was preparing to go ashore for lunch. "Must be someone on board still." 8 passengers there was. I counted them, and I've only got 7 tickets here. Nobody left on board. Look for yourself. One of 'em must have got off without your noticing him. Either that, or he walked on the water. And the captain laughed heartily at his own joke. Chapter 50, In the Cool of the Evening, was first published in the book Star Over Bethlehem and Other Stories. Collins, November 1965. The church was fairly full. Evensong, nowadays, was always better attended than morning service. Mrs. Grierson and her husband knelt side by side in the 5th pew on the pulpit side. Mrs. Grierson knelt decorously, her elegant back curved. A conventional worshiper, one would have said, breathing a mild and temperate prayer. But there was nothing mild about Janet Grierson's petition. It sped upwards into space on wings of fire. "God, help him. Have mercy upon him. Have mercy upon me. Cure him. Lord, thou hast all power. Have mercy, have mercy. Stretch out thy hand. Open his mind. He's such a sweet boy, so gentle, so innocent. Let him be healed. Let him be normal. Hear me, Lord, hear me. Ask of me anything you like, but stretch out thy hand and make him whole. Oh God, hear me. Hear me. With thee all things are possible. My faith shall make him whole. I have faith. I believe. I believe, help me." The people stood. Mrs. Grierson stood with them, elegant, fashionable, composed. The service proceeded. The rector mounted the steps of the pulpit, gave out his text, part of the 95th Psalm, the 10th verse, part of the psalm we sing every Sunday morning. "It is a people who do err in their hearts, for they have not known my ways." The rector was a good man, but not an eloquent one. He strove to give to his listeners the thought that the words had conveyed to him. A people that erred, not in what they did, not in actions displeasing to God, not in overt sin, but a people not even knowing that they erred. A people who, quite simply, did not know God. They did not know what God was, what he wanted, how he showed himself. They could know. That was the point the rector was striving to make. Ignorance is no defense. They could know. He turned to the east, and now to God the Father. He'd put it very badly, the rector thought sadly. He hadn't made his meaning clear at all. Quite a good congregation this evening. How many of them, he wondered, really knew? God again. Janet Grierson knelt and prayed with fervor and desperation. It was a matter of will, of concentration. If she could get through, God was all-powerful. If she could reach him. For a moment, She felt she was getting there. And then there was the irritating rustle of people rising. Fellows, movements. Her husband touched her arm. Unwillingly, she rose. Her face was very pale. Her husband looked at her with a slight frown. He was a quiet man who disliked intensity of any kind. In the porch, friends met them. What an attractive hat. Janet, it's new, isn't it? Oh no, it's terribly old. Hats are so difficult, Mrs. Stewart complained. One hardly ever wears one in the country, and then on Sunday one feels odd. Janet, do you know Mrs. Lamprey? Mrs. Grierson? Major Grierson? The Lampreys have taken Island Lodge. I'm so glad, said Janet, shaking hands. It's a delightful house. Everyone says we'll be flooded out in winter, said Mrs. Lamprey ruefully. Oh no, not most years. But some years I knew it. But the children were mad about it, and of course they'd adore a flood. How many have you? 2 boys and a girl. Edward is just the same age as our Johnny, said Mrs. Stewart. I suppose he'll be going to his public school next year? Johnny's going to Winchester. Oh. Edward is much too much of a moron ever to pass common entrance, I'm sure, sighed Mrs. Lamprey. He doesn't care for anything but games. We'll have to send him to a crammer's. Isn't it terrible? Mrs. Grierson, when one's children turn out to be morons. Almost at once, she felt the chill. A quick change of subject, the forthcoming fete at Wellesley Park. As the groups moved off in varying directions, Mrs. Stewart said to her friend, Darling, I ought to have warned you. Did I say something wrong? I thought so. But what? The Griersons, their boy, they've only got one. And he's subnormal, mentally retarded. Oh, how awful. But I couldn't know. Why does one always go and put one's foot straight into things? It's just that Janet's rather sensitive. As they walked along the field path, Rodney Grierson said gently, They didn't mean anything. That woman didn't know. No, of course she didn't. Janet, can't you try? Try what? Try not to mind so much. Can't you accept? Her voice interrupted him. It was high and strained. No, I can't accept, as you put it. There must be something that could be done. He's physically so perfect. It must be just some gland, some perfectly simple thing. Doctors will find out someday. There must be something. Injections. Hypnotism. You only torture yourself. Janet, all these doctors you drag him round to. It worries the boy. I'm not like you. Rodney, I don't give up. I prayed again in church just now. You pray too much. How can one pray too much? I believe in God. I tell you, I believe in Him. I have faith, and faith can move mountains. You can't give God orders. Janet, what an extraordinary thing to say. Well, Major Grierson shifted uncomfortably. I don't think you know what faith is. It ought to be the same as trust. Janet Grierson was not listening. Today, in church, I had a terrible feeling. I felt that God wasn't there. I didn't feel that there was no God. Just that He was somewhere else. But where so? Really, Janet, where could He be? Where could I find Him? She calmed herself with an effort as they turned in at the gate of their own house. A stocky, middle-aged woman came out smiling to meet them. Have a nice service. Supper's almost ready. 10 minutes. Oh, good. Thank you. Gertrude, where's Alan? He's out in the garden as usual. I'll call him. She cupped her mouth with her hands. Alan. Suddenly, with a rush, a boy came running. He was fair and blue-eyed. He looked excited and happy. "Daddy, Mommy, look what I found!" He parted his cupped hands carefully, showing the small creature they contained. "Ugh, horrible!" Janet Grierson turned away with a shudder. "Don't you like him, Daddy?" He turned to his father. "See? He's partly like a frog, but he isn't a frog. He's got feathers and sort of wings. He's quite new, not like any other animal." He came nearer and dropped his voice. "I've got a name for him. I call him Raffian. Do you think it's a nice name?" "Very nice, my boy," said his father with a slight effort. The boy put the strange creature down. "Hop away, Raffian, or fly if you can. There he goes. He isn't afraid of me. Come and get ready for supper." "Alan," said his mother. "Oh, yes, I'm hungry. What have you been doing?" "Oh, I've been down at the end of the garden, talking to a friend. He helps me name the animals. We have such fun." "He's happy." "Janet," said Grierson as the boy ran up the stairs. "I know. But what's going to become of him and those horrible things he finds? They're all about everywhere nowadays since the accident at the research station." "They'll die out, dear. Mutations usually do. Queer heads and extra legs." She shuddered. "Well, think of all the legs centipedes have. You don't mind them. They're natural. Perhaps everything has to have a first time." Alan came running down the stairs again. "Have you had a nice time? Where did you go to church?" He laughed, trying the word out. "Church, church, that's a funny name." "It means God's house," said his mother. "Does it? I didn't know God lived in a house." "God is in heaven, dear, up in the sky. I told you, but not always. Doesn't he come down and walk about in the evenings in summer when it's nice and cool?" "In the Garden of Eden," said Grierson, smiling. "No, in this garden. Here, he'd like all the funny new animals and things like I do." Janet winced. "Those funny animals. Darling." She paused. "There was an accident, you know, at the big station up on the downs. That's why there are so many of these queer things about. They get born like that. It's very sad. Why I think it's exciting. Lots of new kinds of things being born all the time. I have to find names for them. Sometimes I think of lovely names." He wriggled off his chair. "I've finished. Please, can I go now? My friend is waiting for me in the garden." His father nodded. Gertrude said softly, "All children are the same. They always invent a friend to play with. At 5, perhaps. Not when they're 13, said Janet bitterly. "Try not to mind, dear," said Gertrude gently. "How can I help it? You may be looking at it all the wrong way." Down at the bottom of the garden, where it was cool under the trees, Alan found his friend waiting. He was stroking a rabbit who was not quite a rabbit, but something rather different. "Do you like him, Alan?" "Oh, yes. What shall we call him?" "It's for you to say." "Is it really? I shall call him Fortior. Is that a good name? All your names are good names. Have you got a name yourself?" "I have a great many names." "Is one of them God?" "Yes." "I thought it was. You don't really live in that stone house in the village, with the long thing sticking up, do you?" "I live in many places, but sometimes in the cool of the evening. I walk in a garden with a friend and talk about the new world." Chapter 51. Promotion in the Highest was first published in the book Star Over Bethlehem, and other stories. Collins, November 1965. They were walking down the hill from the little stone church on the hillside. It was very early in the morning, the hour just before dawn. There was no one about to see them as they went through the village, though one or two sleepers sighed and stirred in their sleep. The only human being who saw them that morning was Jacob Narracott, as he grunted and sat up in the ditch. He had collapsed there soon after he came out of the Bell and Dragon last night. He sat up and rubbed his eyes, not quite believing what he saw. He staggered to his feet and shambled off in the direction of his cottage, made uneasy by the trick his eyes had played him. At the crossroads, he met George Polk, the village constable, on his beat. "You'm late getting home, Jacob, or should I say early?" Polk grinned. Jacob groaned and rocked his head in his hands. "Government's been and done something to the beer," he affirmed, meddling again. "I never used to feel like this. What'll your missus say when she sees you rolling home at this hour?" "Won't say anything. She's away to her sister's." "So, you took the opportunity to see the new year in?" Jacob grunted. Then he said uneasily, "You seen a lot of other people just now?" "George coming along the road?" "No." "What sort of people?" "Funny people. Dressed odd." "You mean beats?" "Nah, not beats. Sort of old-fashioned like. Carrying things." "Some of 'em was." "What sort of things?" "Ruddy great wheel. One had a woman. And there was a man with a gridiron. And one rather nice-looking wench. Dressed very rich and fancy with a great big basket of roses." "Roses!" "This time of year." "Was it a sort of procession?" "That's right. Lights on their heads they had, too." "Oh, get on, Jacob. Seeing things. That's what's the matter with you. Get on home. Put your head under the tap and sleep it off." "Funny thing is, I feel I've seen him before somewhere, but for the life of me I can't think where." "Band the Bomb Marchers. Maybe. I tell you, they was dressed all rich and funny. 14 of them, there was. I counted, walking in pairs mostly. Oh well. Some New Year's Eve party, coming home maybe. But if you ask me, I'd say you did yourself too well at the Bell and Dragon. And that accounts for it all. Saw the new year in proper." "We did," agreed Jacob. "Had to celebrate special. Seeing as it wasn't only out with the old year and in with the new. It's out with the old century and in with the new one. January 1st A. Thou 2000. That's what today is. Ought to mean something," said Constable Polk. "More compulsory evacuation, I suppose," grumbled Jacob. "A man's home's not his castle nowadays. It's out with him, and off to one of these ruddy new towns, or bundle him off to New Zealand or Australia. Can't even have children now, unless the government says you may. Can't even dump things in your back garden without the ruddy council coming round and saying, 'It's got to go to the village dump.' What do they think a back garden's for? What it's come to is, nobody treats you like you were human anymore." His voice rumbled away. "Happy New Year." Constable Polk called after him. The 14 proceeded on their way. St. Catherine was trundling her wheel in a disconsolate manner. She turned her head and spoke to St. Lawrence, who was examining his gridiron. "What can I do with this thing?" she asked. "I suppose a wheel always comes in useful," said St. Lawrence doubtfully. "What for?" "I see what you mean. It was meant for torture, for breaking a man's body. Broken on the wheel. St. Catherine gave a little shudder. What are you going to do with your gridiron? I thought perhaps I might use it for cooking something. Pfui, said St. Christina as they passed a dead stoat. St. Elizabeth of Hungary handed her one of her roses. St. Christina sniffed it gratefully. St. Elizabeth fell back beside St. Peter. I wonder why we all seem to have paired up, she said thoughtfully. Those do, perhaps, who have something in common, suggested Peter. Have we something in common? Well, we're both of us liars, said Peter cheerfully. In spite of a lie that would never be forgotten, Peter was a very honest man. He accepted the truth of himself. I know, Elizabeth cried. I can't bear to remember. How could I have been so cowardly, so weak? That day, why didn't I stand there bravely and say, I am taking bread to the hungry instead? My husband shouts at me, what have you got in that basket? And I shiver and stammer out, nothing but roses. And he snatched off the cover of the basket. And it was roses, said Peter gently. Yes, a miracle happened. Why did my master do that for me? Why did he acquiesce in my lie? Why? Oh, why? St. Peter looked at her. He said, so that you should never forget, so that pride could never lay hold of you, so that you should know that you were weak and not strong. I too. He stopped and then went on. I who was so sure that I could never deny him, so certain that I, above all the others, would be steadfast. I was the one who denied and spoke those lying, cowardly words. Why did he choose me, a man like me? He founded his church on me. Why? That's easy, said Elizabeth. Because you loved him. I think you loved him more than any of the others did. Yes, I loved him. I was one of the first to follow him. There was I, mending the nets. And I looked up, and there he was watching me. And he said, come with me. And I went. I think I loved him. From the very first moment. You are so nice, Peter, said Elizabeth. St. Peter swung his keys doubtfully. I'm not sure about that church I founded. It's not turned out at all as we meant. Things never do. You know, Elizabeth went on thoughtfully. I'm sorry now. I put that leper in my husband's bed. It seemed at the time a fine, defiant act of faith. But really, well, it wasn't very kind, was it? St. Apollonia stopped suddenly in her tracks. I'm so sorry, she said. I've dropped my tooth. That's the worst of having such a small emblem. She called Anthony. Come and find it for me. They were in the land of the saints now, and as they breathed its special fragrance, St. Christina cried aloud in joy. The holy birds sang, and the harps played, but the 14 did not linger. They pressed forward to the court of assembly. The archangel Gabriel received them. The court is in session, he said. Enter. The assembly chamber was wide and lofty. The walls were made of mist and cloud. The recording angel was writing in his golden book. He laid it aside, opened his ledger and said, Names and addresses, please. They told him their names and gave their address. St. Petrock on the Hill, Stickle Buckland. Present your petition, said the recording angel. St. Peter stepped forward. There is unrest amongst us. We ask to go back to earth. Isn't heaven good enough for you? Asked the recording angel. There was, perhaps, a slight tinge of sarcasm in his voice. "It is too good for us." The recording angel adjusted his golden wig, put on his golden spectacles, and looked over the top of them with disapprobation. "Are you questioning the decision of your Creator? We would not dare, but there was a ruling." The Archangel Gabriel, as mediator and intermediary between heaven and earth, rose. "If I may submit a point of law." The recording angel inclined his head. "It was laid down by divine decree that in the year D 1000 and in every subsequent 1000th year, there should be fresh judgments and decisions on such points as were brought to a special court of appeal. Today is the second millennium. I submit that every person who has ever lived on earth has today a right of appeal." The recording angel opened a large gold tome and consulted it. Closing it again, he said, "Set out your case." St. Peter spoke. "We died for our faith, died joyfully. We were rewarded far beyond our deserts. He hesitated and turned to a young man with a beautiful face and burning eyes. "You explain." "It was not enough," said the young man. "Your reward was not enough." The recording angel looked scandalized. "Not our reward. Our service, to die for the faith, to be a saint, is not enough to merit eternal life. You know my story. I was rich. I obeyed the law. I kept the commandments. It was not enough. I went to the Master. I said to him, 'Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?' You were told what to do, and you did it," said the recording angel. "It was not enough. You did more. After you had given all your possessions to the poor, you joined the disciples in their mission. You suffered martyrdom. You were stoned to death in Ephesus. It was not enough. What more do you want to do? We had faith, burning faith. We had the faith that can move mountains. 2,000 years have taught us that we could have done more. We did not always have enough compassion." The word came from his lips like a breath from a summer sea. It whispered round the heavens. "This is our petition. Let us go back to earth in pity and compassion, to help those who need help." There was a murmur of agreement from those around him. The recording angel picked up the golden intercom on his desk. He spoke into it in a low murmur. He listened. Then he spoke, briskly and with authority. "Promotion granted," he said. "Approval in the highest." They turned to go, their faces radiant. "Hand in your crowns and halos at the door, please." They surrendered their crowns and halos and went out of the court. St. Thomas came back. "Excuse me," he said politely, "but what you said just now, was it permission granted, or was it promotion granted?" "Promotion. After 2,000 years of sainthood, you are moving up to a higher rank." "Thank you. I thought it was promotion you said, but I wanted to make sure." He followed the others. "He always had to make sure," said Gabriel. "You know, sometimes I can't help wondering what it would be like to have an immortal soul." "Oh, pun." The recording angel looked horrified. "Do be careful. Gabriel, you know what happened to Lucifer. Sometimes I can't help feeling a little sorry for Lucifer. Having to rank below Adam upset him terribly. Adam wasn't much, was he?" "A poor type," agreed the recording angel. "But he and all his descendants were created in the image of God with immortal souls. They have to rank above the angels. I've often thought Adam's soul must have been a very small one. There has to be a beginning for everything, the recording angel pointed out severely. Mrs. Badstock heaved and pulled. The smell of the village dump was not agreeable. It was an unsightly mass of old tires, broken chairs, ragged quilts, old kerosene tins, and broken bedsteads. All the things that nobody could possibly want. But Mrs. Badstock was tugging hopefully. If that old pram was any way repairable, she heaved again, and it came free. "Drat," said Mrs. Badstock. The upper portion of the pram was not too bad, but the wheels were missing. She threw it down angrily. "Can I help you?" A woman spoke out of the darkness. "No good. Blasted thing's got no wheels." "You want a wheel? I've got one here." Ducks. But I need 4. And anyway, yours is much too big. That's why I thought we could make it into 4. With a little adjustment." The woman's fingers strayed over it. Pushing. Pulling. "There. How's that?" "Well, I never. However did you... Now, if we'd got a nail or 2, or a screw, I'll get my hubby. I think I can manage." She bent over the pram. Mrs. Badstock peered down to try and see what was happening. The other woman straightened up suddenly. The pram stood on 4 wheels. "It will want a little oil, and some new lining. I can see to that easy. What a boon it will be. You're quite a little home mechanic, aren't you? Ducks. How on earth did you manage it?" "I don't know, really," said St. Catherine vaguely. "It just happens." The tall woman in the brocade dress said with authority, "Bring them up to the house. There's plenty of room." The man and the woman looked at her suspiciously. Their 6 children did the same. "The council are finding us somewhere," said the man sullenly. "But they're going to separate us," said the woman. "And you don't want that." "Of course we don't." 3 of the children began to cry. "Shut your bloody mouths," said the man, but without rancor. "Been saying they'd evict us for a long time," said the man. "Now they've done it. Always whining about their rent. I've better things to do with my money than pay rent. That's councils all over for you." He was not a nice man. His wife was not very nice either, St. Barbara thought. But they loved their children. "You'd better all come up to my place," she said. "Where is it?" "Up there." She pointed. They turned to look. "But that's a castle," the woman exclaimed in awestruck tones. "Yes, it's a castle all right. So you see, there will be lots of room." St. Scoitin stood rather doubtfully on the seashore. He wasn't quite sure what to do with his salmon. He could smoke it, of course. It would last longer that way. The trouble was that it was really only the rich who liked smoked salmon. And the rich had quite enough things already. The poor much preferred their salmon in tins. Perhaps the salmon writhed in his hands, and St. Scoitin jumped. "Master," said the salmon. St. Scoitin looked at it. "It is nearly 1,000 years since I saw the sea," said the salmon pleadingly. St. Scoitin smiled at him affectionately. He walked out on the sea and lowered the salmon gently into the water. "Go with God," he said. He walked back to the shore and almost immediately stumbled over a big heap of tins of salmon with a purple flower stuck on top of them. St. Christina was walking along a crowded city street. The traffic roared past her. The air was full of diesel fumes. "This is terrible," said St. Christina, holding her nose. "I must do something about this." And why don't they empty the dustbins oftener? It's very bad for people. She pondered. Perhaps I had better go into Parliament. St. Peter was busy setting out his loaf and fish stall. Old age pensioners first, he said. Come on, Granddad. Are you national assistants? The old man asked suspiciously. That kind of thing. Not religious, is it? I'm not going to sing hymns. When the food's all gone, I shall preach, said Peter. But you don't have to stay on and listen. Sounds fair enough. What are you going to preach about? Something quite simple. Just how to attain eternal life. A younger man gave a hoot of laughter. Eternal life? What a hope. Yes, said Peter cheerfully, as he shoveled out parcels of hot fish. It is a hope. Got to remember that. There's always hope. In the church of St. Petrock on the Hill, the vicar was sitting sadly in a pew, watching a confident young architect examining the old painted screen. Sorry, vicar, said the young man, turning briskly. Not a hope in hell. I'm afraid. Oh, sorry again. I oughtn't to have put it like that. But it's long past restoring. Nothing to be done. The wood's rotten, and there's hardly any paint left. Not enough to see what the original was like. What is it? 15th century, late 14th. What are they saints? Yet, 7 each side. He recited, St. Lawrence, St. Thomas, St. Andrew, St. Anthony, St. Peter, St. Scoiton, and one we don't know. The other side, St. Barbara, St. Catherine, St. Apollonia, St. Elizabeth of Hungary, St. Christina the Astonishing, St. Margaret, and St. Martha. You've got it all very pat. There were church records, not in very good condition. Some we had to make out by their emblems. St. Barbara's Castle, for instance, and St. Lawrence's gridiron. The original work was done by Brother Bernard of the Benedictines of Froyle Abbey. Well, I'm sorry about my verdict, but everything has got to go sometime. I hear your rich parishioner has offered you a new screen with modern symbolical figures on it. Yes, said the vicar without enthusiasm. Seen the big new cathedral center at New Huddersfield, Coventry was good in its time, but this is streets ahead of it. Takes a bit of getting used to. Of course, I am sure it would, but it's taken on in a big way, modern. Those old saints. He flicked a hand towards the screen. I don't suppose anyone knows who half of them are nowadays. I certainly don't. Who was St. Christina the Astonishing? Quite an interesting character. She had a very keen sense of smell. At her funeral service, the smell of her putrefying body affected her so much that she levitated out of her coffin up to the roof of the chapel. Phew, some saint, oh well. It takes all sorts to make a world. Even your old saints would be very different nowadays. I expect. Oh, exactly. Chapter 52. The Island was first published in the book Star over Bethlehem and Other Stories, Collins, November 1965. There were hardly any trees on the island. It was arid land, an island of rock, and the goats could find little to eat. The shapes of the rocks were beautiful as they swept up from the sea, and their color changed with the changing of the light, going from rose to apricot to pale misty gray, deepening to mauve and to stern purple, and in a last fierceness to orange, as the sun sank into that sea so rightly called wine dark. In the early mornings, the sky was a pale, proud blue, and seemed so high up and so far away that it filled one with awe to look up at it. But the women of the island did not look up at it often. unless they were anxiously gazing for signs of a storm. They were women, and they had to work. Since food was scarce, they worked hard and unceasingly, so that they and their children should live. The men went out daily in the fishing boats. The children herded the goats and played little games of their own with pebbles in the sun. Today, the women with great jars of fresh water on their heads toiled up the slope from the spring in the cleft of the cliff to the village above. Mary was still strong, but she was not as young as most of the women, and it was an effort to her to keep pace with them. Today, the women were very gay, for in a few days' time there was to be a wedding. The girl children danced round their elders and chanted monotonously, "I shall go to the wedding. I shall go to the wedding, Hom. I shall have a ribbon in my hair. I shall eat rose-leaf jelly. Rose-leaf jelly in a spoon." The mothers laughed, and one child's mother said teasingly, "How do you know I shall take you to the wedding?" dismayed. The child stared. "You will take me. You will. You will." And she clung to Mary, demanding, "She will let me go to the wedding. Say she will." Yea. And Mary smiled and said gently, "I think she will, sweetheart." And all the women laughed gaily. For today, they were all happy and excited because of the wedding. "Have you ever been to a wedding, Mary?" the child asked. "She went to her own," laughed one of the women. "I didn't mean your own. I meant a wedding party, with dancing and sweet things to eat, and rose-leaf jam and honey." "Yet I have been to weddings." Mary smiled. "I remember one wedding very well, a long time ago, with rose-leaf jam." "I think so. Yes. And there was wine." Her voice trailed off as she remembered. "And when the wine runs out, we have to drink water." One of the women said, "That always happens." "We did not drink water at this wedding." Mary's voice was strong and proud. The other women looked at her. They knew that Mary had come here with her son from a long way away, and that she did not often speak of her life in earlier days, and that there was some very good reason for that. They were careful not to ask her questions. But of course, there were rumors. And now, suddenly, one of the older children piped up and spoke like a parrot. "They say you had a son who was a great criminal and was executed for his crimes. Is that true?" The women tried to hush her down, but Mary spoke, her eyes looking straight ahead of her. "Those that should know said he was a criminal, but you didn't think so," the child persisted. Mary said after a pause, "I do not know of myself what is right or wrong. I am too ignorant. My son loved people, good and bad, equally." They had reached the village now, and they divided to go to their own homes. Mary had farthest to go, to a stone croft at the very end of the cluster of sprawling buildings. "How is your son? Well, I hope?" asked one of the women politely. "He is well, thanks be to God." To erase the memory of what had been said before, the woman said kindly, "You must be proud of this son of yours. We all know that he is a holy man. They say he has visions and walks with God." "He is a good son," said Mary, "and, as you say, a very holy man." She left them to go her own way, and they stood looking after her for a moment or two. "She is a good woman." Yes, it is not her fault, I am sure, that her other son went wrong. Such things happen. One does not know why. But she is lucky in this son. There are times when he is animated by the Spirit, And then he prophesies in a loud voice. His feet, they say, rise off the ground, and then he lies like one dead for a while. They all nodded and clucked in wonder and pleasure to have such a holy man amongst them. Mary went to the little stone cottage and stood the jar of water down. She glanced towards where a man sat at a rudely fashioned table. There was a scroll of parchment in front of him, and he bent over it, writing with a pen, pausing now and then, whilst his eyes half closed as he lost himself in the ardors of the Spirit. Mary was careful not to disturb him. She busied herself in getting together the midday meal. The man was a man of great beauty, though no longer young. He had great delicacy of feature, and the faraway eyes of a soul to whom spiritual life is as real as the life of the body. Presently, his hand slackened on the pen, and he seemed almost to pass into a trance, neither moving nor speaking, and indeed hardly breathing. Mary put the dishes on the table. "Your meal is ready, my son," as one who hears a faint sound from very far away. He shook his head impatiently. "The vision! So near!" He muttered, "So near! When? Oh, when?" "Come, my son, eat." He waved the food away. "There is another hunger, another thirst. The food of the Spirit. The thirst for righteousness. Yes. But you must eat, to please me, to please your mother." Gently she coaxed and scolded, and at last he came down from that high exaltation and smiled at her with a human half-teasing look. "Must I then eat to satisfy you?" "Yeah, or else I shall be made unhappy." So he ate to please her, hardly noticing what the food was. Then he bethought himself to ask, "How is it with you?" "Dear mother, you have all you need. I have all I need," said Mary. He nodded, satisfied, and took up his pen once more. When Mary had cleared all away, she went out and stood looking out over the sea, her hands clasped together. She bowed her head and spoke softly under her breath. "Have I done all I could? I am such an ignorant woman. I do not always know how to serve and minister to one who is assuredly a saint of God. I wash his linen, and prepare his food, and bring him fresh water, and wash his feet. But more than that, I know not how to do." As she stood there, her anxiety passed. Serenity came back to her worn face. On the shore beneath, a boat had drawn into the little stone pier. It was not an ordinary fishing boat, but one that stood high in the water and had a big curving prow of richly carved wood. 2 men landed from it, and some old men who were mending fishing nets came to accost the strangers. Politely, the 2 men made known their business. "We seek amongst the islands hereabouts for an island on which is said to dwell the Queen of Heaven." The old fishermen shook their heads. "What you seek is certainly not here. We have no shrine such as you describe." "Perhaps your women have knowledge of such a shrine," one of the strangers suggested. "Women are often secretive about such matters. Inquire if you wish. One of us will go up and show you the village." The strangers went up with their guide. The women came clustering out of their houses. They were excited and interested, but they all shook their heads. "No goddess has her shrine here. Alas, neither by our spring nor elsewhere." They told him of other shrines reported from other places, but none of them were what the strangers sought. "But we have a holy man here," said one of the women proudly. "He is skin and bone, and fasts all the time when his old mother will let him." But the strangers were not looking for a holy man. "However great his sanctity, at least inquire of him," one of the women insisted. "He might know of such a thing as you seek." So they went to the holy man's croft. But he was lost in his vision, and for some time did not even hear what they were saying to him. Then he was angry and said, "Do not go astray after heathen goddesses, not after the scarlet woman of Babylon, nor after the abominations of the Phoenicians. There is only one Redeemer, and that is the living Son of God." So the strangers went away. But the holy man's mother ran secretly after them. "Do not be angry," she begged. "My son was not meaning to be discourteous to you, but he is so pure and so holy himself that he lives in a region far above this earth. He is a good man and a good son to me." The strangers spoke kindly to her. "We are not offended. You are a good woman and have a good son." "I am a very ordinary woman," she said, "but I must tell you that you should not believe in all these Aphrodites and Astartes and whatever their heathen names are. There is only one God, our Father in heaven." "You say you are only an ordinary woman," said the older of the two strangers, "but although your face is old and ravaged with the lines of sorrow, yet to my mind you have a face of great beauty, and I in my time was apprenticed to a great sculptor, so I know what beauty is." Mary, amazed, cried out, "Once, perhaps, when I wove the colored tapestry in the temple, or when I poured my husband's wine in the shop, and held my firstborn son in my arms. But now—" But the old sculptor shook his head. "Beauty lies beneath the skin," he insisted. "In the bone, yes, and beneath that again, in the heart. So I say that you are a beautiful woman, perhaps more beautiful now than you were as a young girl. Farewell, and may you be blessed." So the strangers rowed away in their boat, and Mary went slowly back to the croft and to her son. The coming of the strangers had made him restless. He was walking up and down, and his hands clasped his head in suffering. Mary ran to him and held him in her arms. "What is it, dear son?" He groaned out, "The spirit has gone out of me. I am empty, empty. I am cut off from God, from the joy of his presence." Then she comforted him, as she had comforted him many times before, saying, "From time to time, this has to be. We do not know why. It is like the wave of the sea. It goes out from the shore, but it returns. My son, it returns." But he cried out, "You do not know. You cannot understand. You do not know what it is to be caught up in the Spirit, to be exalted with the great glory of God." And Mary said humbly, "That is true, that I have not felt. For me, there has been only memory. Memory is not enough." But Mary said fiercely, "It is enough for me." And she went to the door and stood there, looking out over the sea where the strangers had gone away. As she stood there, she felt a strange expectancy rising in her, a fluttering, hopeful joy. Almost, she went down to the shore again, but she restrained herself, for she knew that her son would soon need her. And so it was. He began to shake all over, and his body jerked, and at last his limbs stiffened, and he fell to the ground and lay like one dead. Then she covered him over for warmth and placed a fold of the cloak between his lips, in case the convulsions should come back. But he lay there motionless, and there was no sign, even, that he breathed. Mary knew from experience that he would not stir for many hours, and she walked out again onto the hillside. It was growing dark now, and the moon was rising over the sea. Mary stood there, savoring the welcome coolness of the evening. Her mind was full of memories of the past, of a hurried flight into Egypt, of the carpenter's shop, and of a marriage in Cana. And again that joyous expectancy rose in her. Perhaps, she thought, perhaps at last the time has come. Presently, very slowly, she began to walk down to the sea. The moon rose in the sky, and it made a silvery path across the water. And as the light grew stronger, Mary saw a boat approaching. She thought, the strangers are coming back again. But it was not the strangers. She could see now that it was not the handsome carved boat of the strangers. This was a rough fishing boat, the kind of boat that had been familiar to her all her life. And then she knew, quite certainly, it was his boat, and he had come for her at last. And now she ran, slipping and stumbling over the rough stones of the beach. And as she reached the water's edge, half sobbing and half panting, she saw one of the three men step out of the boat onto the sea and walk along the moonlit path towards her. Nearer and nearer he came, and then, she was clasped in his arms. Words poured from her, incoherently, trying to tell so much. I have done as you asked me. I have looked after John. He has been as a son to me. I am not clever. I cannot always understand his high thoughts and his visions, but I have made him good food, and washed his feet, and tended him, and loved him. I have been his mother, and he has been my son. She looked anxiously up into his face, asking him a question. You have done all I asked you, he said gently. Now, you are coming home with me. But how shall I get to the boat? We will walk together on the water. As she peered out to sea, are those? Yes, they are. Simon and Andrew. Are they not? Yes, they wanted to come. How happy. Oh, how happy we are going to be, cried Mary. Do you remember the day of the marriage in Cana? And so, walking together on the water, she poured out to her son all the little events and happenings of her life, and even how two strangers had come that very day looking for the Queen of Heaven. And how ridiculous it was. They were quite right, said her son. The Queen of Heaven was here on the island, but they did not know her when they saw her. And he looked into the worn, ravaged, beautiful face of his mother, and repeated softly, No, they did not know her when they saw her. In the morning, John awoke and rose from the ground. It was the Lord's Day, and at once he knew that this was to be the great day of his life. The Spirit rushed into him. He took up his pen and wrote, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And behind me I heard a great voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead. And behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. Oh,